Well, hello and happy Thanksgiving. Glad to have you here today. It's IB Nation Sports Talks Notre Dame football midweek mailbag. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. For the first time, we're doing this. Oh, the gun show. The gun show coming out. I see.
I just changed shirts.
For the first time, we are doing this in different parts of the same house. Jesse is back for Thanksgiving. And we are ready to roll tonight. I see we've got a lot of regulars in the house for the show tonight. Glad to have everybody here as more people continue to log in. And you can hear the sounds of the kitchen in the background where Jesse sits as my wife gets the Thanksgiving feast prepared the night before. How are you today, Jesse?
Easy day of work. Just been hanging out. I was going to ask you something. This is a topic that just came up amongst my friends group. Do you think that Drinksgiving, or as other people might call it, Blackout Wednesday, is a real thing or just an excuse for alcoholics to get drunk?
Well, what do you mean by a real thing? I mean, it's a real thing if people do it. I mean, it can be, those are kind of one and the same, what you just described there. It's a real thing, and it's just an excuse for alcoholics to get drunk. I mean, I guess we should just go ahead. I saw this question pop in here earlier, if I can find it now. DK wants to know what time Jesse gets home tonight after the biggest bar night of the year. Does he return? And this is, this is people college age and still in their 20s go back to their hometown for Thanksgiving. And this night, basically Thanksgiving Eve, is the biggest bar night. It's a thing, I think.
Yeah, but
right?
Who wants to roll into Thanksgiving drunk or hungover with their family? I don't know. That just doesn't sound like the most enjoyable time. But
I don't think most people care. They just lay in bed and they wait until their mom or grandma wakes them up and, hey, it's time to eat. Let's go. Let's get this on. Right?
Yeah. I guess long story short, it's just not. And like you were saying, I was reading stuff today that bartenders say that it rivals St. Patrick's Day, New Year's Eve, all of the big drinking holidays. And
I can see that.
I guess I just never realized how seriously people take it. And I guess because I texted my friends, we're in a big group chat, and they were like, "It's Blackout Wednesday. Who's getting blackout tonight?" I was like, "That seems very aggressive." And then they were like, "It's a national holiday." And I was like, "It is not a national holiday."
It's not a national holiday, but it's definitely a thing. Those are two separate issues. USM 87 says it's a real thing for Stymie. Whew, yes. I mean, I'm way out of that demographic. It's been a long time since I ever had to think about that. But
I was thinking about it. I was like, the thing is I have two really good friends from high school. One lives in Arizona and one has a second baby due in 2 months. So none of those people do me any good when I'm here. And I'm not just going to go out by myself and randomly run into all the people in high school that I didn't enjoy. So I don't know. Maybe I'll crack a couple cold ones tonight and watch some NBA basketball by myself.
Not a bad idea. Play it safe. You don't have to worry about Ubering or
And that's
whatever.
The other thing is, there's got to be police everywhere. This is one of their biggest days of the year too.
You would think so. Yeah. Want to make sure everyone remembers that Notre Dame Stanford is on the Pac-12 network Saturday night. And I saw some stuff on our boards today. Apparently people have tried to find the game who got Fubo TV because Pac-12 network is not offered by many outlets, especially if you're outside of California or outside of the Pac-12 footprint. So Fubo TV is the place to find it. I actually, when I was in Washington, D.C. last weekend, I used the Fubo TV account to watch the Notre Dame Wake Forest game while we were on the bus going from the arena to the plane, and then on the plane for a little bit as we were waiting to take off. Now, there is a little kind of asterisk next to this because apparently you need to not only have Fubo TV, but there is I think it's called Fubo Elite. You have to pay Yeah. That's what DK. This is what I was getting to. You have to pay the upgrade. It's like the elite package. Apparently, you have to get Pac-2 to get the Pac-12 right now, but very soon, Pac-2. You have to get the elite package apparently, which is like an extra $8 or something like that to get the.
Listen, I'll do everyone a solid. I'll find the illegal stream. I'll post it on the boards.
Oh, you
Tread
do.
lightly, whether or not you want to use that
Will
link
I
or
be
not.
able to download that and put it on my TV though? That's
You'll
the question.
probably be stuck to a computer, and then you'll need a HDMI to connect your computer into your TV. I can do all those things. I know how to do all those things.
Yeah, but you're not going to be here Saturday. You're leaving Saturday.
I'm just saying, I'm for the IB people who don't want to pay for Fubo Super Duper Plus Extreme.
Fubo.
Well, exactly. I'll find
Is it Fubo? Now you
an
got
illegal
me
stream,
confused.
and I'll post it on the boards. And if you want to use it, you can use it.
Okay. DK, Jesse, that's illegal. I'm shocked. So yeah. Okay, so USMA 87 says earlier chat was saying you can go through an app in Prime Video to get Pac-12. Well, I'll try that as well. We do have Prime, so
I do have Prime as well.
I'll give it a shot. I'll see. I didn't realize that was a potential offering. Thanks for that. If you have Prime, check it out. Do it right now, as a matter of fact. While you're watching us.
Can you star that Brian question?
Brian, okay.
I just didn't want it to get lost. Sorry.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Okay. You want to just start with that?
I mean, if you're good.
Actually, you know what? There's something sort of similar to that. Let's start with DK. What percentage of your whiteboard plays did Parker use Saturday?
So I don't. It's hard to when you're enjoying the game in the comfort of your own home. It's a lot different than being up in the press box. It's you can be a lot more analytical. By the time the game starts, I've usually got a couple drinks or something going on, and I don't get caught up of like every single play type situation. I'm more so looking at bigger overall picture, and I would say the play that automatically comes to mind is that play action to Raritan in the back of the end zone. That is what I was getting at in my whiteboards last week. Was there just needed to be showing one look that you've shown a lot of and doing something different out of it. And they came out in a single back. I can't remember if they were under center or in shotgun, but it was still like a pistol look, right? It was, and majority of the time they've run out of that. Like I would say without looking at the numbers, it would probably be close to like 85-90% chance of run on that play. And they hit a play action. And Hartman rolls out and hits that pass in the back of the end zone. So that was great. That is what I was looking for, is showing a look, utilizing play action, which Jared Parker didn't do the week before. And so he accomplished two things in one. And what was the result? A beautiful touchdown to your tight end in the back of the end zone. So that is the overall concept of what I was looking for. And yeah, I thought that, that wasn't the only instance, but that was the one that, automatically comes to mind.
So does the offense take another step forward from last week?
I'm hoping so, because I need Sam Hartman for 5 touchdowns and 250 yards to hit my season-long Sam Hartman bets. But no, I do think that the offense does continue to trend in the right direction. I think that you found but it seems like, it's not coincidence that Notre Dame did more play action and some of the stuff that we talked about. Jared Parker, told us in his press conference that he had basically someone prep him the questions or the hot topics, and it felt like he took those into consideration and did but did some things that a lot of people were critical of. And I think that you're going to see more of that go in the Stanford game.
Listen, I think that it's not just that they decided to use more play action, because they have used play action at different, throughout the season. It's just that they were not very successful with it. I think the offense will continue to take a step forward because Stanford's defense stinks, and Wake Forest's defense, worse than Wake Forest. And I think, quite honestly, I think that part of the reason it wasn't just, evolutionary. All of a sudden we're calling play action and we're doing some different things. it's a big part of the end result that they got was because Wake Forest defense was a step down from what they've been playing over, that stretch. Clemson's defense was good. Clemson obviously didn't have a good record, but look, they're in the playoff rankings this week, and Clemson has a good defense. Louisville has a good defense. Ohio State has a good defense. Duke has a pretty good defense. Notre Dame went through a stretch of playing some pretty good defenses, and Pittsburgh, not a good defense, and they lit Pittsburgh up. Part of the reason that they ended up with what they ended up with and the offense looked the way it was not just because they were doing something different. It's because Wake Forest stinks and Stanford stinks defensively. Like Stanford statistically stinks even worse than Wake Forest. And so because of that, I do think the offense will continue to look good because you're going up against another bad opponent. And I'm not trying to use that as a knock on Notre Dame. It just is what it is. Like they're going to naturally look better because who they're going up against is worse.
Yeah, I think the true test for this question will be the bowl game because, like you said, they're not going to play. It's easy to look good against non-quality opponents. They've done that all year. Navy, Central Michigan, North Carolina State, Middle Tennessee, or was it Tennessee State? Either way. And then now you add in, Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, and potentially Stanford. It's cool to do the stuff against teams that you're supposed to. I want to see the success against the teams where you really needed it, those big games against some better defenses. And so until they play a better team more like themselves in a bowl game, I think it's kind of hard to come up with a final answer of will they take a step forward until they play someone that's, on the caliber of a better team, really.
Exactly. USMA 87 on the subject of the FUBO or the Notre Dame Pac-12. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. The Pac-12 network. That's what you've got to find. USMA 87 says Amazon Freevee is what he found.
Whoa.
So I'm going to have to check this out. I've never heard of some of this stuff. I'm going to have to check it out after I get done tonight and see what exactly is there.
Oh, also adding on the offense, I thought that they did more of getting some of their personnel groupings on the field. I saw the trips formation that had Faison and Chris Tyree to the trips in one side. So I thought that was also really nice to see. And it also probably helped that Jaden Greathouse seems to be closer to 100% than, what he was the last month. That's just a great addition to your wide receiver core.
And this kind of follows up on what we were talking about, the question that you saw from Brian. He said he thought the play calling was a lot better last week. Do you think Parker builds off this? Honestly, if he doesn't, there are some problems.
I think that what you would want to hope in terms of building off of is exactly what we were just kind of going through is just show new plays off of formations that you've already run. And I don't know if anyone – I love the Manning cast. I told you the other day this is a straight Manning cast game for me, the Chiefs and Eagles. And I like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. I just love how much I learned from listening to the Manning cast the entire time and listening to Peyton talk. And, a thing that they brought up that Peyton kept talking about, Andy Reid comes up with new red zone plays every single week. And what he does is he comes out in formations that they've shown before. So you think you know what's coming, and it's a completely different play. And it's like, it's one of the greatest offensive minds in the last 2 decades in the NFL. That's just what I want. I just want Notre Dame to come out and try some stuff that they haven't shown before.
It's
utilizing their best skill positions on offense.
It's shocking to me that you're absolutely right. Andy Reid is one of the best offensive minds in football for more than 2 decades, going on 3 decades at this point. And considering the success, now I understand that he's got Patrick Mahomes, but even before that, he had Alex. They were getting to the playoffs and winning divisions with Alex Smith, and everyone was like, well, if we really, want to be a competitor, we need another quarterback. And they obviously got an elite quarterback, but I'm surprised that more people haven't tried to copy more of what Andy Reid has done, considering the NFL and football in general is such a copycat sport. I'm just surprised more people haven't tried to copycat one of the more successful offensive coaches of this century, really.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at is if an NFL offensive coach has to do it, I feel like a college coach could, easily take a couple notes. And I have to give it's funny, Joe Allen brought this up. I thought Mark Wahlberg was also horrible on the Manning cast the other night. I don't know if you caught it. I texted you about it afterwards. Just felt like the guy didn't want to be there. And it's like, why are you coming on a show that you don't want to be on? Like, it was the most, like, it just felt like he was getting annoyed that they were asking him questions. And it's like, dude, you're coming onto their show. Obviously, they have to ask you questions to pass time along. Like, I don't know. It was horrible.
Feel like he's starring in a hostage video sometimes when you see him and stuff like that. Like,
exactly.
Come on, man. Come on. Thanks for the props to the shirt, John. I wore my WKRP shirt today to honor one of the great moments in Thanksgiving history, the WKRP turkey drop. The words of Les Nessman, or the words of Mr. Carlson, as God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. You've seen that episode, right? You've watched it with me?
Yes.
The
I'm
DVD
sure I'll see it tomorrow.
DVD player in this house barely works now. I've got it, but that's, man, I think we need to find a way to fire that up. Oh my God, they're turkeys. DK, is Angeli going to make it rain out there next year?
You know, I've been really impressed what I've seen from Steve Angeli so far. And I know it's easy to, well, it's not easy to come in and play in mop-up time, but it's less stressful than it is, obviously, if you're starting, you know, beginning of the game, tied 0-0, you know, the moments, there's more pressure in a 0-0 game. It's obviously way less pressure in a 40-7 type game. But in the opportunities that he's gotten, there's two things that I've really enjoyed. One, that the Notre Dame has let Angeli run the offense. It's not just straight handing the ball off like you see with most backup quarterbacks. He's actually running plays. And there was I can't remember where I saw it, but basically there was a play last week where Angeli switched the play at the line of scrimmage because he didn't get the look that he liked, and he ended up making a really nice play out of it. That's what I like to see. And so not only are the coaches trusting him to run the offense, they're also, you know, Angeli's performing well. He's putting a lot of passes on the money.
Not that he's, a lot of it is still short range type stuff, but at the same time, I feel like sometimes they're more creative with what they're letting him run than what they're letting Sam Hartman run out there. Yeah, but I've been impressed. I think that this guy has done everything that he can do. And I've been impressed with, you know, every time he's had an opportunity, he has come through and he has made plays, and he's leading touchdown drives. They're not just, I like the fact that from a development standpoint, they're not just saying, hey, Angeli, we've got a huge lead, you know, just keep handing off and let's grind this thing out and kill the clock. They're letting him run some offense and letting him do some things, seeing what he can do. And I think it's great. And, you know, like, I think this guy is making a statement that you can bring in a transfer quarterback or whatever, but I'm going to be a part of this mix, and I'm going to make a case for myself. So I like it. I really like it. And, you know, I've been on the fence a little bit because nothing that we really got to see before this year said definitively, and it, you know, what he's done still isn't definitive, but nothing said, yeah, this is going to be the next guy. But I think that he's definitely made a case for himself. So I like it.
Definitely moved the needle in terms of the conversation.
Yep. Tommy Guns asking how the men's basketball team is doing. Haven't heard anything since the loss to Auburn. Can you do a schedule rundown for the next week or two? They're actually playing tonight. I believe it is Maryland Eastern Shore. They are hosting this evening. So out there at Purcell Pavilion. And after they lost to Auburn, they actually beat Oklahoma State the next day. They went.
Oh, they ended up winning that game?
Yeah.
That was awesome. There's I didn't know that there was a South Bend kid that played for Oklahoma State as well.
Oh, I didn't either. What's his name? Do you remember?
I can't remember. I just know that like they basically posted a picture of Burton next to the Oklahoma State guy, and one of my friends that's a South Bend local kind of basketball coach retweeted and was like, great to see, you know, like two South Bend guys out there. But yeah, sorry. I didn't notice that they won that game in overtime.
Yeah, they did. So yeah, so again, they beat Oklahoma State. Now they've got Maryland Eastern Shore tonight. And look, the football regular season is almost over. So we'll be checking in on more Notre Dame men's and women's basketball as we go forward. You'll get some more of that. There's always going to be football talk here, regardless of if it's during the regular season or whenever. And there's obviously going to be bowl prep and all that kind of stuff. But we will be checking in more regularly with basketball.
I think what we need to do, me, you, and Vince, is strictly when all the bowls come out, we just run through every game and do picks and just see who ends up with the best.
We could do that. Would it benefit any of us? Because I know Vince won't bet any money on it.
I told you how much I've wagered in the last calendar year, so I'll be placing.
I know that you'll bet, but I know Vince won't. Unless it's like $5 or something like that. It's like
I just got another 200 free sign-up bonus, so I'm locked and loaded, baby, for bowl season.
Mark is asking about the thoughts from Dave Clawson, the Wake Forest comments on Sam Hartman from Senior Day. Tune in to Countdown to Kickoff. We're going to address it in Countdown to Kickoff. We decided we're going to save it for that so that Vince has an opportunity to chime in on that as well. So
Vince.
Countdown to Kickoff show coming up this weekend. We will be talking about the Dave Clawson. We'll actually play the Dave Clawson comments, and we will.
DK said it on the last show. Vince is the prima donna of the group.
I mean, I don't spot the lie. Stonador. Are big rivalry games going to be devalued in the 12-team playoff era? I could see situations where top teams play 2 or 3 games against each other in a year, making earlier games less meaningful. What do you think about that?
A rivalry game. So I have to kind of there was a lot going on here. Yeah, I could see situations.
Basically, will rivalry games be devalued in the 12-team playoff era?
So the one that automatically comes to mind is, clearly Michigan and Ohio State, because I always play this game last game of the season. And it always feels like, there's a lot riding on it with the 4-game playoff if it could really impact your season. I think that rivalry will always be a rivalry. But again, recently, I feel like it's been more intensified because of, what comes from it. When 2 teams are undefeated and, there's a 4-team playoff, I think that this game has less impact and will have less, not that the players won't take it as seriously, but I think subconsciously it just doesn't. It's not as big of a game now that there'll be 12 teams because you can still lose that game and find your way into the playoff. It's more so just kind of for bragging rights. And I think that's what, for these top end teams like Michigan, Ohio State, hypothetically, maybe Florida State. I think in terms of it being a true rivalry game, I think it's a little bit less intensified because you can still lose that game and go on to have a successful season in terms of, making the college football playoff, etc.
I mean, it is a possibility, like USMA 87 says, for example, Ohio State versus Michigan regular season, then a Big Ten championship, then in the playoffs. And I mean, there's a chance that they would be like this year, they still have the divisions in the Big Ten. Next year, they're getting rid of them. So there's a very good chance that next year they could play in back-to-back weeks. And we've talked about it on this show before. Like, do you need to think about moving that game up in the season so that you're not potentially playing in back-to-back weeks? And, for right now anyway, that's a legit possibility. They both made the playoffs last year. There's a really good chance that they're both going to make it this year, depending on how the game goes. I mean, in that instance, I do think it gets devalued a little bit just because you're going to get there's still a lot of hype because both of these teams are unbeaten. It's, the end of the regular season. The winner is going to get into the conference championship game. I think the bigger question, like if we're specifically talking about this as it relates to some of these conference championship games, is will the conference championship games continue going forward with these huge conferences that we're going to have? Like, I think that if you ask most coaches, they would just rather see the emphasis placed on the regular season and not necessarily on a conference championship game. Now, the problem with that is the money that the conferences would potentially be given up, especially since the current contracts have these conference championship games written in. But I think it's there's so much to it because you've got these huge conferences. Pretty much all of them are getting rid of the divisions and just going with the first 2 teams, the top 2 teams in the conference getting in. But at the same time, because you're going to have 17 and 18 team conferences, obviously not everybody's playing each other. So it's honestly like you don't just need 2 divisions, you might even need 4 divisions to figure this thing out by the time it's all said and done. So look, the question was about the de-emphasis of rivalries. I think the regular season rivalry game, there's still going to be a lot on them because not everyone is going to be Ohio State and Michigan playing at the end of the season for a chance to get into the college football playoff. So you're still going to have some good rivalry games, just like you've got across the country, that will have meaning. But even if they don't have national impact in meaning, they're going to have the regional, somewhat regional meaning, because of, the teams involved. That's why they're rivalries. I think the bigger concern is we're losing out on some of these rivalry games because of all the conference realignment. Like Bedlam, is that going to continue? As of right now, it's not. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, the Bedlam series, that's going to be put on hold for a while. Now, I know that this was not a national rivalry game, but Kansas and Missouri was one of the oldest rivalries running before Missouri moved to the SEC a few years back, and they haven't played since then. And so from that regional aspect, that was a long running great / bitter rivalry that has gone extinct because of a team moving conferences. And there's a chance that you're going to see more of that. So I think that's the greater risk to me, is just losing out on some of these rivalries because of teams moving around. And, like if you're Notre Dame, the one real rivalry that they've still got running right now is USC. And you've just got to hope that all this stuff, as of right now, there's no impact, but you got to hope that continues going forward.
I thought someone brought up another great point of that these games, there still could be bye week implications depending on some of these kind of big games / rivalries. Like I was talking about the Ohio State Michigan game, that could potentially be, if they play consecutive weeks, it could be that happens, and the other side of it could be that one team gets the bye in the first round. So I think it still would intensify that game.
True. And that's, like the bye week impact, that's going to be a thing too, as they switch to this 5 and 7 model where the 5 get the automatic bids. And obviously if you're one of the top 4, then you get a bye. You don't have to play in that first round. So there's going to be a lot to it. And I think these first couple years of how the 12-team playoff plays out are going to kind of tell us a lot. Speaking of which, thanks for the super chat, Tyler. Would this be the perfect year for the 12-team playoff?
Let me give myself a quick refresher on the top 12 right now. Full scoreboard, standings.
Yeah, I think that you've got, you still have a lot of remaining unbeaten teams, so that helps. Behind them, you have, a handful of one. You look at the top 10 right now: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Washington, Florida State, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Missouri, Louisville, Penn State, Ole Miss. That's the top 12. Now, not all of them would get in because you're still probably going to have a group of 5 mixed in there. And that's a whole different discussion altogether. I've never felt like the group of 5 needs to be in there, but they weren't going to expand it without the group of 5 casting the vote in there. So you basically had to include them if you wanted to expand it. But it would obviously be a very competitive 12-team playoff if you did it this year.
I think that this would be a really good 12 team year, just because when you start looking, to me, it's like Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan are what they are. I think there's a lot of discrepancy afterwards of Washington, Florida State, Oregon, and then you get into Texas, Alabama, and Louisville, and then you start getting into some of those 2-loss teams. I do think that this is, because I think between Washington and Louisville, so 4 through 10, I think there's a lot of disparity where, that a lot of those games could go different ways. And so I do think that this would be a really good year to kind of have the 12-year format or 12-team format. And I'm on the same boat as you, as I don't, the group of 5 thing, it is what it is. Like you shouldn't get rewarded for playing in a crappy conference. That's a reason why you're not in a Power 5 conference, because you can't make it against those teams. And it's just like, look what happened to James Madison last week. Everyone went on their soapbox talking about how James Madison deserves this or that. Listen, the season wasn't even over yet, and they lost to Appalachian State in double overtime. So I'm in agreement with you. The group of 5, maybe like a Tulane, here or there might be something. But again, at the end of the day, I don't get a lot of interest in group 5 teams.
Yeah, I mean, when all this conversation about expanding the playoff was kind of getting started, UCF was still a thing. And look at where we are just a few years later. And then, Cincinnati makes the playoff. Look where Cincinnati is. Cincinnati is horrible right now. And so like it's going to change every year with these group of 5s. And, they never get me excited seeing them. I realize, I guess you've got to let the little guy play for something, but when it comes down to it, for, our TV viewing, entertainment, interest purposes, we want to see the big boys go at it.
Yeah, and it's like Tulane last year beat beat USC. Everyone could score points on that USC team. It was just a matter of who was probably going to get the ball last. It's just like if Tulane came in and played an actual well-rounded team with just an average defense, I think that they would have struggled in those games.
Boise State 2007 would have won a championship that year. That would have been something. Very good possibility. We didn't even have a playoff back then. Joe wants to know if we had to choose, keep Golden or Stuckey. Who's it going to be?
This is a loaded question. It's like, are you taking the now? Or are you taking in something like, to me, like Stuckey is almost like a stock that you would invest in and hope you would get a good return on investment. Golden is there's no worry. He's like the paycheck that comes every week. You're going to get that money. And so I would have to stick with Golden for that reason. He's proven. The thing is, you just wouldn't know. There's a lot of, good things to say about Stuckey, but at the end of the day, you don't know how he would act on his own as the head man in charge, as the defensive coordinator. You know what you're getting with Golden, but then the flip side of Golden is he could leave you in a year or 2 years. You don't know how long you're guaranteed to have him for. So that to me is the root of the argument. I think you got to stick with Golden as long as you really can, in my opinion.
You're talking about a veteran coordinator who's been a head coach versus a still really young, pretty inexperienced position coach who's a good recruiter, but still has to prove himself, I think, as an actual position coach versus, again, like everyone was calling for Al Golden just a year ago, and this was a horrible defense. Look at where this defense is right now. And that's where it swung in a year. I wonder what the poll would have looked like a year ago if you said, is it, do you move on from Al Golden right now? Would it have been 50%? Would it have been even greater than that? Or, where, you never know if it's, just like a vocal minority or if it's the actual majority. It seemed a lot more like the majority, because like anytime we were talking about this defense and, trying to put any kind of positive spin before the season started on this defense, you just kind of get shouted down by, this and this, and they're horrible. And is, whatever.
Linebackers have short arms.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Short arm linebackers can't do anything. But again, you're talking about a veteran coordinator versus a young position coach. So to me, it's not even a question. You obviously keep the veteran coordinator who's got one of the best defenses in the country and who is, up for the Broyles Award this year, the assistant coach of the year. That's who you keep if you got to choose those two. It's not a question to me.
Let me flip it over to you, though, because you just talked about last year and Al Golden's first year and kind of the, the amount of outrage or maybe backlash that he faced. Where does Jared Parker fall in that? Does he deserve that second year? Because it's kind of the same situation. Everyone's kind of coming at Jared Parker, but do we owe him a second year and potentially get an Al Golden type situation on the offensive side of the ball?
I mean, it's a good question because even though you've got a veteran quarterback running things, you've still got a veteran quarterback from outside the system really learning the system, just like he was a first-year guy coming in. There's still certain things you expect of the quarterback with that experience that we haven't seen, like his progressions, his reads seem a little bit slow, like he's a beat or two behind where he needs to be. But at the same time, just like with Al Golden, you got a guy, you've got some of these other guys in your system for a year or two. How much benefit is that? How much more benefit is there with these young receivers who are still freshmen, but who have been produced, who at least we've seen start to produce? They've been the best receivers they've got, but they're all young and inexperienced. How much does that factor in as well when you are combining them with a quarterback who came in from outside the system? So, I mean, I think it's a really good question. And the short answer is, I think that, we're evaluating this guy on the fly right now. We did start to see some better things last week. And let's not forget, no one was bitching about the play calling when they were lighting up the scoreboard the first 4 games of the season, right? To me, it comes down to, can he be better against the better teams on the schedule? So I don't think you need to just necessarily throw him out with the bathwater is, I guess, my answer to that.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I think it'll help having someone like
this is fair though too. From USMA 87.
That was
Parker
kind of
doesn't
what I
have
was
the
gonna get at.
experience that Golden has, not an equivalent comparison. That's completely fair. Golden was, coming back from the NFL and everything else that came with it, trying to get his system in and sort of, learning the opponents and all that kind of stuff, figuring out where to simplify. I think that's a completely fair response to that.
Yeah, and I think that what you can also look at in terms of what you were saying is wide receivers will have experience. Jared Parker will have more experience. The running backs will have more experience. And I think most importantly, even though Angeli hasn't played all year, he's practiced in the system all year. So next year is technically year 2 for him, even though he hasn't been a starter. And I think that could be very beneficial for someone like Angeli or Menchie of, obviously this was Sam's first time in a slow mesh offense / first time with Jared Parker. Now you have someone who's always played in a more traditional style offense, and it's his second year with the coordinator. So I think some of that could bode well.
DK wants to know, do we get back-to-back games with a wide receiver going over 100 yards? Why does the great one always stop at 99 yards? Is it a homage? I'm going to say no. I don't think that they're going to have – well, you know what? Yes! I'm just going to go boom. I'm going to double down on this. Considering the defense they're going to play and the chance for Sam Hartman to light it up to end the regular season, I think that one of these wide receivers is going to go over 100 yards in this game. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I think it's going to happen. I just can't tell you who it's going to be.
Right.
So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to pick which one it's going to be because Rico Flores had like an over-under of 29.5 yards or something like that last week. And I was scared to go in like the over on that. I think you went over on Flores, didn't you, when we were doing that on Countdown?
Yes, I did go over on Flores. I took over on just about everyone.
Yeah, but I was not feeling confident in that, and look where that led. He ends up with the 100-yard game. But I'm going to say one of the receivers will. That's still the thing, is like we don't know who it's going to be, and that's ultimately a good thing. How would everyone feel if Tobias Merriweather walked out of Palo Alto with his first career 100-yard game?
Man, that would be a great way to end the season. I feel like he's been heating up here a little bit. Yeah, I would. I think that would give me a lot more, not a lot more, but I think I'd have more confidence about him and the rest of the wide receivers kind of going forward. It's funny to me because I feel like Tobias is ultimately like the overall indication of like the success of the wide receiver room at times.
All right, I'm going to save some of actually, I'm going to throw this one in here first. Did the Great One's 48-yard catch and run for a touchdown, evading or running through 3 defenders, argue for a more prominent role in the intermediate and deep passing game? Of course, that comes from Salty. The bottom line here to summarize, does the Great One, Jaden Greathouse, need a more prominent role in the intermediate and deep passing game?
I think that all of these wide receivers need more of an impact. I don't think it needs to be singular of, Jaden Greathouse or Rico Flores or, whoever. I think this question is more so like, do you think that there needs to be more kind of design deep shots for Greathouse? Has he shown that guy to be kind of like your downfield guy? And when I think of a downfield guy for Notre Dame and just a guy who always seemed to be that deep route guy is Michael Floyd. And I don't know why, but I loved his game. And I think if there's someone on this roster that could mimic, Michael Floyd's, if Greathouse could fill into kind of the body that Michael Floyd had, that he has, to me, the best chance of kind of resembling that game. So resembling that kind of play style. So I wouldn't mind seeing more of the Greathouse stuff. But then again, I wouldn't mind seeing some more stuff designed for Rico Flores as well, because I feel like he's also been someone who's been really dynamic this year.
I think that especially with the intermediate stuff, that Greathouse has the body type to be able to do that. But it goes back to some of the stuff that we've talked about before. And I know we talked about it last week, the fact that he's one of these guys who is a slot guy who is being asked to do non-slot things as well. And the fact that you've got to figure out how to maximize all of these guys whose ideal role is out of the slot. You've got to figure out how to make them productive when they're not in the slot. I think that going forward this offseason, that's going to be a big thing because, again, when you've got this much young talent, they've got to figure out how to play some different roles. And they move these guys around all the time in practice. But I think that's going to be the thing for them is you can't just have slot receivers doing stuff out of the slot. Now, as you diagrammed last week, you can you can bunch them and trips and some different stuff like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you've got to have big body guys like Greathouse and Tobias Merriweather winning some one-on-one matchups more often.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is Josh says the 2 receivers that have shown to catch the deep ball are Tyree and Tobias. That has been the case so far. ND Sailor again asking about Clawson's comments about Sam Hartman. We're saving that for the countdown show. Saving that for the countdown show. We're not going to spoil that today. So be sure and tune in for the countdown show. IB Countdown to Kickoff, the Stanford game edition this weekend, and we're going to play the Clawson comments, and we will comment on the Clawson comments. I toyed with doing it today, but again, I want Vince to be here for that. I want to hear what our resident old man has to say about Dave Clawson saying that, because especially since he was there at the stadium to hear the Whitney Houston playing. I've only heard about it. I didn't get to hear, I Will Always Love You and all that stuff. T-Guns wants to know when Jesse finally decides to tie the knot, how many IB Nation will be invited to the wedding? It's funny that this came up because
it's like the third time it's come up today.
His mother was grilling him today about this. So
then I got a text of a picture that said, I heard K Jewelers is having a massive sale today with a picture of K Jewelers. So I don't know what's going on in the universe today, but for some reason this question has popped up 3 times.
Yeah. Salty's saying that the Great One was a boundary guy all through high school and set the receiving records. Well, as we know, though, there is a difference between what you do in high school and what you do in college with more physical receivers. But that's part of being in college, though, as well, is now, like, if you look at, I think Tobias is the obvious guy for what I'm about to say, but any of these freshmen fall into this as well, even for, like Greathouse has a bigger frame and all that, but the off-season conditioning is going to be huge for these guys. like physically developing.
Yeah,
That's
these
where you
guys
start.
just need to get stronger and go up
Right.
and get balls. That's what none of
That's right.
these young guys have. They don't have, and that's what I was trying to get at with Michael Floyd is any type of pass that was thrown. Michael Floyd had a body that he was going to go, and it could be underthrown. It could be, off a yard or two to the right, or it didn't matter. Michael Floyd was so physical that he would almost go and get every ball. And that's what I think one of these wide receivers needs to establish this offseason is who's going to be that guy of even when the quarterback might throw a bad ball that they can recalibrate and go up and get the ball. That's what they need in that wide receiver room up, to me is just a guy who's going to go up and fight for just about every ball.
That's it. And they don't have that right now. And that's what they have to have. Like Marcus Freeman was talking, I think a couple of weeks ago about winning 50-50 balls and that kind of thing. And they don't have that guy right now. That's what they've got to have. And you develop that in the offseason in the weight room. That's where that really starts.
Like how many have you seen them throw a fade ball this year in the goal line?
In the goal line, off the top of my head, no, I don't think we have seen that. Now, I've never been
same, but I don't think they have the wide receiver to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's not something
I'm not a fan of it either, but I still think you could try it here and there.
Yeah. Well, if you have the guy that that you can rely on, but as we just said, I don't think they do. I don't think they do right now. Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am. There's a lingering question in the super chat question that I'm really anxious to get to here.
We're gonna get to it. I saved the Dallas Cowboys stuff for rapid fire. I didn't want to throw that in the main segment. So, Audri Estime, not named one of the 10 semifinalists for the Doak Walker Award. He tweeted, "Bet," shortly after the semifinalists were announced, and he was not on the list. What do you think it means for this week's game against Stanford?
First of all, I hate that that's the thing now. Why are we just tweeting bet every time someone gets upset? And I thought I didn't like it even more because everyone in Michigan just did it. I was like, but okay, besides the point. I think what you'll see out of Audri Estime is a hungrier version, and that's like even scarier because it feels like that guy is always ready to go, right? And so I think you might see a little bit of a more mean streak in Audri Estime. I think you might see instead of him hurdling guys, you might see him running through some guys against Stanford this weekend. But, realistically, it's out of his control. He doesn't control the share of snappage or snaps and how often he's going to get the ball or whatever. So I think it's more or less what he's going to do with the ball once he actually gets it. And I think you're going to see maybe a bit of a physical guy who's obviously got a little bit more something to prove this weekend in terms of his opinion. I don't think he's got anything to prove. I think he's one of the top backs in the country, but I think that Audri Estime wants to prove to everyone why he belongs on that semifinal list.
I think it means bad news for the Cardinal is what it means,
especially in that fourth quarter.
That's exactly right. Like, do you want Audri Estime or do you want a ticked off Audri Estime hungry coming out of Thanksgiving weekend? And I think, like Mr. T said, he's going to hurt him real bad. That's what it's going to look like. I am even more anxious to see what this looks like out there now than I was before, because we definitely have not seen the best of Audri Estime for probably the last 5 or 6 weeks, but I'm not saying that is on him, but he has been one of the best running backs in the nation. Like you ask, like Mel Kiper Jr., I think he's still got him, if not at the top of his list, near the top of his list in terms of the NFL running backs in the draft. And how he is not on this, in the semifinals for this award is beyond me. So I do think he's going to take it out on Stanford, and I'm looking forward to seeing it Saturday night. Assuming that I can find Pac-12 network someplace.
You see the Indy Sailors comment that I love. That's kind of what they're missing this year in terms of the backfield. Him and Tony Pollard together. That reminds me of a little bit younger version of Zeke, and that would be
I mean, are you really going to get my hopes up?
Ooh, that's what I mean. We already love.
I went all in, and I sat there and I, watched the first round of that
For
stupid
Mayor.
draft, and Mayor was available, and I'm sitting there, like rubbing my rabbit's foot, and it's like, come on, Jerry, pull the trigger, Jerry, let's do it, Jerry. No, he did not. And Mayor, ends up going in the second round of the Raiders, and they end up taking this stupid Schoonmaker from Michigan. Yeah, he's been, well, they took him in the second. They took Mozzie Smith
at the
from
first, yeah.
Two Michigan guys, now that I think about it.
Back
it's
to
like
back.
Neither one of them has been very big impact. So I would, more than love to have Audri Estime with Dallas, and it would be a thunder and lightning type situation. You pair him up with Tony Pollard. That
you
would
could
be
get him on behind Zach Martin for Zach Martin's last couple years.
DK, this might be the smartest thing you've ever said. Estime is too good for Dallas. I mean, that's
they wouldn't utilize him properly.
No, they wouldn't. Figure out a way to screw it up again. Which is more surprising, Jesse, that Notre Dame is 8-3 or that USC is 7-5?
Oh, it's got to be that USC is 7-5. I thought USC would see a little bit of a drop off this season. I didn't think that they would see it in terms of 5 losses. I thought that 2 losses might have been their ceiling in terms of losses, right? Or the floor, I guess you would say. But I have to go with USC. Notre Dame is a bit surprising, but I honestly thought that 9-3 was going to be the lowest that Notre Dame would go. I didn't think that they would have 4 losses. I thought that 3 losses was their bare bottom. I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought it was going to be realistically probably going to sit around 2 losses. But yeah, a 5 number for USC is really, really bad considering, you have Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
You have what is considered to be one of the, best offensive coordinators in college right now, who's also the head coach. So I just think it's a waste of a season for USC and ultimately not a good look. And if you listen to Paul Feinbaum, there's people who think that he should be, Riley is really did himself in this year and it could be on the hot seat.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the reigning Heisman Trophy winner that for half the season was looking like he was going to win it again. Where did that campaign end? Ended at Notre Dame Stadium, actually. But like the stretch that they just finished to end the season, I mean, I knew it was going to be tough. It started with Notre Dame, and then they had Utah, they had Cal. They barely beat Cal. If they don't beat Cal, they're in the midst of a 6-game losing streak right now, and that's what's crazy. But, Washington, Oregon, UCLA, I thought that they stood to lose probably 3 of those games. 5, the fact that they have lost 5 of their last 6, and the one win is by 1 point, and they had to come from behind to beat Arizona as well by 2 points. I mean, Arizona's been a nice, kind of upstart, surprising story and all that kind of stuff. But I am completely shocked that USC is 7-5 with everything they had. And you thought, especially coming into the season, like maybe as the season started to play out and you saw how bad that defense was, maybe you could have seen that. But you'd think that they would have been better coming into the season. They went out and got Bear Alexander from, like you would have thought that the defense was going to be better. And I'm completely shocked, because like you said, I still thought that the floor for Notre Dame was probably 10-2. Right now, they're only, 1 win off that. So I'm completely shocked that USC is where they are right now. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Michigan fans are threatening a boycott of game day in Ann Arbor because ESPN had the gall to report on the school's cheating scandal.
It is just another day in the Michigan saga. It's just like, I'm so tired. Like I had a buddy today sending me stuff that apparently now there's, people looking at Ohio State and their Venmos and, this people a part of their video. It's like, guys, just stop with the whole victim part of this thing. You messed up. You need to accept your consequences. Yes. And it's time to stop diverting or deflecting onto other people. Just accept it. That's all that I want at this point is just accept it because you talk to every Michigan person and it's just another day is another way of trying to find something to deflect or, divert onto. And it's just accept it. Stop being ridiculous. Stop being babies and just own up.
It's just amazing that, they know that this happened. Everyone has within the program, they have acknowledged that it's happened. the fact that Michigan dropped, going to court, because new evidence came up. It's like they know that they were
plea
caught.
deal.
That's exactly right. But the fans can't accept it, and they want to play this whole victim card, and they are just so soft with everything they do. And it's like Michigan tries to act, and Jim Harbaugh tries to act like he's so hard, but he's soft, and they're all soft, and they're like, you can't be hard when you're playing the victim game. I'm sorry. It's that and they just are acting like the total victim in this whole thing. And the fact that they're so soft about it's hilarious, actually. And I would like to see, since they are threatening this boycott, if it actually happens. Like, will College Game Day go on and it'll be like the quietest on-campus College Game Day show ever? It would be kind of funny, but I would like to see if they actually follow through. And my guess is they won't, because they're soft and, they're just threatening.
Yeah, it's just all
hard.
smoke.
Yeah, that's what it is. Florida State fell out of the top 4 in the college football playoff rankings after the Jordan Travis injury last week. Fair or foul? They fell out.
That's foul. I think you have to continue to place a team based off of what they've done and not what you think they're going to do going forward. I mean, listen, Florida State's got 2 games left. One's going to be
Florida this week.
Florida, and then they're obviously going to play Louisville in the ACC championship. If you really have doubts about Florida State, then let them see what happens in the Louisville game. But they shouldn't be punished for what you anticipate is going to happen. I think that you should be rewarded to what you've done to date. And we don't know. What if Florida State has a stud backup quarterback? Obviously, he's not going to be as good as Jordan Travis, but you just don't know. And so I don't think it's fair to be judged off of what you're anticipated or what's believed to happen rather than what you've already proven to happen.
There was an argument to leave Ohio State out of the college football playoff when they were down to Cardale Jones.
Yeah, and the guy won the natty for him.
And they won the national championship. I think you have to at least wait until you
really
see what Rodemaker can do on the field before you knock them like this. Everything they've done to this point says that they deserve to be where they were in the 4 spot, and now Washington has passed them up. They haven't even taken the field since the injury, and I think that they deserve to stay there. Now, like, there are other games that are going to play out as well, but obviously if Washington wins out, what happens if Washington wins out and Florida State wins out? Would they move them back in? What's going to happen there? We know that Ohio State, Michigan, one of them is going to end up with 1 loss, but I don't think you can dock them. Let them play a game at least before you knock them down. There's no reason to, because again, there's precedent to show that teams can, it is still a team sport where 22 guys take the field. I realize the quarterback is the most important position on the field, but it is still one player at this point. At least let it play out and see what happens this week before you start moving them down. I think it's completely foul. I think they moved them down too soon. Do you buy or sell Louisville as a college football playoff team if they go 12-1?
So I saw something the other day. I hope I can potentially bring back up these rankings, but basically it was like, say Louisville wins, say Oregon beats Washington, Alabama beats Georgia. Now you're stuck with all these 1-loss teams. It's like, who ultimately deserves to get in? I mean, I think that's the case. If you're going to play these championship games and you say that they have meaning and that they carry weight, I think that a 1-loss ACC championship in Louisville deserves to get in, as long as there's not 4 undefeated teams ahead of them, the 4 conference champion undefeated teams ahead of them. Because if you say that these games are meaningful and you say that they have weight on this Final 4, then they should be rewarded for winning the ACC and being a 1-loss team at the end of the day. So I do think that Louisville would deserve to be in the playoff if they won the ACC.
We know that either Ohio State or Michigan are going to make the playoff. If Alabama ends up beating Georgia, then they're in. And, is Georgia also going to be in, depending on how that
That's
game
what it would
plays
come
out.
down to. Is it 1-loss Georgia or 1-loss Louisville, who's
and
an
don't
ACC
forget,
champ?
don't forget you've still got Texas that's in the mix that, of course, has the win over Alabama. And if Texas runs the table, are you going to leave them out because they're, if they end up with only one loss, that means they've won the Big 12 as well. I just don't think I think there's too much in front of Louisville for them to make it in. You're going to see multiple teams from either the SEC or the Big 10 most likely, and then that's going to leave you with two other spots, or two other spots. And again, like if Ohio State and Michigan both get in, at least Alabama or Georgia is also getting in. So that leaves you with one spot basically. And I think that there's too much for Louisville to have to climb to get over all that, even if they win out at this point.
So let me ask you this. So there's going to be an undefeated Big Ten champ in the playoff. Like I can almost 100% say that. So that's one of 4 spots taken away, right? Say that Washington beats Oregon again. So then you have 2 spots taken, 2 undefeated teams, 2 conference champions. And then you're looking at a one-loss, maybe a one-loss Texas team, or a one-loss Florida State team, or a one-loss Michigan or Ohio State team. Louisville would hold the trump card above all those one-loss teams to me, because they're a one-loss team and a conference champion. All those other one-loss teams had their shot and they lost in the conference championship. And so I think Louisville would see a good jump of a lot of these teams, because again, if you say that these conference championships are meaningful and you say that you have to play them, then that Louisville should be rewarded for that. And if there's a bunch of other one-loss teams like Louisville, they hold the trump card. They won a conference championship. And so I think there's a very good possibility, if I'm Louisville, I think there's a good, like a 50-50 shot that they could end up in that 4 spot at the end of the day, depending on, who loses. You can't, if you're Louisville, you want all the undefeated teams to remain undefeated. And you want all the one-loss teams to keep losing.
You've got to remember the other side of this is it's not just that Louisville has one loss. Like all these other teams have quote unquote good losses. They've lost to good teams, right? Like when you go down the line here, so far, Michigan or Ohio State, one of them is going to lose to the other one. Oregon has lost to Washington, number 4 in the playoff right now. Texas has lost to, Texas, I guess. Yeah, Texas has lost to Oklahoma. So that's like probably the worst loss of all of them, but it's still not a bad loss because Oklahoma, is not wretched, I guess, compared to Pittsburgh is my point. My whole point was Louisville has lost to Pittsburgh. And, so that counts against Louisville. It's not that they lost to a good team. They lost to a horrible team. So I think that that's going to be a factor as well. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I think losing to Pittsburgh and with the quality that they're going to be measured against with those other teams, I just think that it's going to be too much. I think best case scenario, Louisville ends up sitting like in the 5th or 6th spot when it's all said and done.
I was going to say, I feel like they're going to be the first or second team out, assuming they win the ACC. And, Josh, you bring up a good point. Yeah, it would be a win without Jordan Travis against Florida State. They can't control that. Their job is just to get there and to win the game. They can't control what's in front of them. They can only control, essentially the game itself. And so, again, I'm not for punishing teams just because, I'm not for Florida State being dropped in the rankings without Jordan Travis, and I'm not for Louisville, essentially an asterisk next to the game because Jordan Travis wasn't playing. It's just that's what it is. Everyone goes through injuries at some point. It's just it so happens that obviously the quarterback injury is more prominent compared to others.
But that would also be their best win of the season. Florida State without Jordan Travis, if it gets to that point.
I think Notre Dame's more impressive than a win against Florida State without their starting quarterback.
You think so? Even with Notre Dame sitting there with 3 losses right now?
Because I think Notre Dame is what Louisville did offensively against what is probably considered a top 5, top 10 defense, I think was impressive what Louisville did.
Yeah, that's true too. Tommy Guns was saying something earlier about now would be a good time for his question. I'm not sure which one. I used 1 or 2 of your questions earlier, so I don't know if you tuned in or out, but
We'll never be able to appease Tommy Guns, baby.
I
He's
know.
always got a burning
There's always
question.
another question. It's got to be in there. So the Cowboys and Lions are, of course, the Thanksgiving Day tradition. Lions get the early game, Cowboys get the middle game, and of course, they've added a late game a few years back. Do you like having them on every year, or would you like to see more of a rotation?
Essentially at this point, I enjoy Cowboys on Thanksgiving. I should say I enjoy that they play on Thanksgiving. I don't necessarily love their performance on Thanksgiving, but but honestly, hear me out here, because every team's got to play a Thursday game at some point in the season. If the Cowboys got to play a Thursday game, I'm on board with having it be on Thanksgiving, because it feels like it's not your typical crappy kind of, Thursday game. I like being able to be home with you and watching the game and eating, leftover Thanksgiving food. And that's the thing, is if I'm going to watch football on Thanksgiving, it's cool being able to see my team. I think it adds more to kind of the holiday itself. I enjoy Thanksgiving because the Cowboys play. Again, it's not necessarily how they play, but the fact that they are playing on Thanksgiving.
When I was your age, I still loved having the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, but I am more than twice your age at this point, and it has become the way they have performed in recent years. I
told you earlier they're 1-11 against the spread the last 12 years.
That's exactly right.
So that's underperformance.
That says it all. I am tired of being miserable on Thanksgiving watching my team play for the sake of the rest of the country's entertainment. I am just tired of it at this point.
Everyone else is just hanging out, enjoying themselves, and it becomes very stressful on Thanksgiving.
At least the Lions are good now. So, whatever they give us tomorrow should be better than what we're used to seeing, But the Cowboys, I can take it or leave it. I'm preparing for a miserable experience tomorrow, watching them play the Commanders.
First time this year, Commanders, one of two.
That's right. That's right. Did you know that Ron Rivera only has 3 winning seasons as a head coach in his career?
Did not know that, but he gets a lot of hype for those Cam Newton years.
He does. And he's basically turned those Cam Newton years into the career that he has right now. So speaking of which, another super chat from Tyler. Your favorite Dallas Cowboys Thanksgiving game of all time and why? I'll give mine first. Mine is actually, the guy, the redhead, the ginger, who's been catching all the grief on NBC Notre Dame broadcast the last few years. 1994, Jason Garrett was better than Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers on Thanksgiving Day, backing up Troy Aikman. Aikman was out. Jason Garrett led the Cowboys to win over Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers. So that is
very unexpected Thanksgiving delight.
Yep, that is probably the one that stands out to me.
Oh man. Tyler, I thought long and hard about this question, and I don't have as good of an encyclopedia memory like the other person on this podcast does right now. So I have a hard time remembering
I won't say it's completely encyclopedic, but
I mean, you remember a lot of things. I can barely remember who they played the last 5 years, I guess is what I'm getting at. And so I started looking
Vince only remembers things if there's food on the line. So.
Right. So I started looking basically from what I could remember. To be honest with you, I took this question as probably what was my least enjoyable game. And I would say there's a good list. The 2015 game against the Panthers hurt. Romo threw 3 interceptions, and that was his last Thanksgiving game ever, actually, as it turned out. The game against the Bills was miserable a couple years ago on Thanksgiving. It felt like Josh Allen was 100% passing and also ran for just about every first down. Losing to the Raiders in double overtime 2 years ago really sucked because it was just penalties everywhere. That was
horrible.
That's one of my least favorite ones.
Yeah, that's one of the worst ones ever, that Raiders game.
That Raiders game was just brutal because it was just flag after flag after flag after flag after flag, and it was so ticky-tacky and touchy. So I hated that game. If we're going to I think I'm just going to have to go with every year they beat the Commanders because I love when they beat divisional opponents on Thanksgiving. They beat them in 2016. Another one that came to mind was like a 20-19 win over Miami. I can't remember what year that was, but for some reason that one came to mind. So yeah, I think
it's amazing the ones I don't remember. That's the thing.
So I just I think it shows kind of, again, I enjoy the Cowboys playing on Thanksgiving, but they play so poor on Thanksgiving. And fortunately, the poor games are what really sticks in my mind. And that Raiders game 2 years ago was just like, it felt like the tip of the iceberg. It was just horrible watching that game. It was miserable watching that game.
I concur on that. That's for sure. So Tommy Guns, here's one from Tommy Guns. If you could buy your dream truck, which brand would it be? Dodge, Ram, Chevy, Nissan, Toyota, other. You know, like no one's in on the F-150s. Like I don't. I'd probably just go Chevy. I guess I've always been partial to the Chevys. No real reason. I've never owned a pickup myself. The closest thing, my dad had an El Camino, you know, back in the day when I was in high school. But I guess he does have a pickup truck right now, but he didn't have it when I was living at home. So I would just go Chevy. I would go Chevy.
I'm going Ford. It's not on his list, but I'm going Ford, baby. And then second would be Dodge. I don't know why, but that's where I'm at.
Dodge Ram. Okay. Sounds good. And finally, Archer 452. Happy Wednesday. This year, I'm thankful for the beat down the cheaters in Ann Arbor are going to catch on Saturday. Go Bucks. Beat TTUN. What is TTUN? What is it?
That team up north.
Oh, that team up north. Okay. I guess I'm not from Ohio, so
I see it way too much to not know what it is.
I'm sure you do. Like around Cleveland, do they have any M's crossed out like they do on the Ohio State campus?
No, they don't actually. It's funny. I was thinking about it. I was like, I've never seen like you would maybe see like potentially see like interstate signs that might have like an M crossed out on it as you get towards Columbus, but I haven't seen it. And I'm not in Columbus this year. So
yep. Tommy included the Ford on the list belatedly, it looks like. So, he said Ford comes with a heated tailgate, so your hands warm pushing it home in the winter. Now pushing in the winter is something I remember because whether it was the El Camino or the conversion van my parents had that I drove, I used to run out of gas all the time because I never had money to put gas in the tank. And fortunately, I was the one, you know, like giving rides and stuff like that. So I typically had at least one, if not two other guys to help me push when we ran out of gas. So you remember running out of gas from, you did it once in your high school days?
Yeah, I ran out of gas. I was close to a gas station though. Just had to get that bad boy right around the corner.
Yeah. All right. Well, that
twice actually. I ran out of gas in Toledo one time as well.
Oh,
and I had to. Then the running out of gas in Toledo is not fun. There is, and it was like, okay, this is going to get me on a little bit of a tangent, but I've never seen. I think Toledo has to be for the sample size per what is it, capita or whatever. The most
talking about
in the middle of the summer, the most broken down cars I've ever seen was Toledo, Ohio. And it was funny. I was making fun of it. And then like a week later, I ran out of gas and I had to walk to the gas station, buy a gas tank, fill it up, and walk it back to my car.
Not funny. Running out of gas sucks no matter where you are, what time of year it is. There are worse places, you know, there are worse places than others to run out of gas.
I almost remember running out of gas coming back from Wisconsin from a women's basketball game. I think it was Monday night. It was the night Brett Favre's father died.
In that blizzard?
In that blizzard. And we were so scared we were going to run out of gas in that blizzard.
We almost did. We just made it to the exit and got off and managed to fill it up. That was, oh boy, that was a night. All right. Well, hopefully no one's driving in blizzards. Make sure if you are driving, you're driving with a full tank of gas as much as possible. Be careful out there if you're traveling this Thanksgiving. And don't forget, IB Countdown to Kickoff will drop. The YouTube version will drop Friday night. The podcast audio version will drop Saturday morning. We've got more shows coming up as well on Friday. I know Brian is going to have a live show on Friday. Ryan's got a recruiting show that'll be popping up on Friday as well. So not sure. I don't think we have anything necessarily planned for Thanksgiving, but we still got plenty of shows for you this Thanksgiving weekend. So everybody have a great Thanksgiving weekend, and we will talk to you on IB Countdown to Kickoff. Vince will be with Jesse and I for that coming up this weekend as well. Enjoy the holiday. We will talk to you later this weekend. IB Countdown to Kickoff.